Most people slept on this one so hard it's criminal. God Eater 3 throws you straight into a post-apocalyptic war where you're not just fighting monsters, you are hunting gods. Massive, terrifying creatures called origami, and every single fight feels like a UFC match where only one person is walking out alive. The combat here is fast. Like blink and you miss it fast. You're switching between a giant blade the size of a bus and a gun within the same combo, and it all chains together so smoothly you'll start feeling like you choreographed an action movie. The weapons aren't just different in looks either. They completely change how every fight plays out. You want to go heavy and aggressive, pick a Buster Blade. You want to dance around enemies and punish every opening, grab a Boost Hammer. You want to make enemies regret existing, Double Blades. Every single weapon type has its own rhythm, and mastering them feels insanely rewarding. The RPG side gives you a solid build system where your gear, skills, and burst arts combo together, so you're constantly upgrading, experimenting, and finding something that hits even harder than before. In the enemy design, these origami are big. They hit like trucks. They have patterns you actually need to study. The moment you finally crock an origami's pattern and tear it apart in under 30 seconds, that dopamine rush is real. But here's what nobody talks about. There's a specific late-game origami in this game that the community says is one of the hardest action combat encounters on the entire PS4 platform. And the first time most players see it, they turn the console off. Picture Dark Souls. Now drag it into a dark, hand-drawn nightmare world in 2D, and somehow make the combat feel even more punishing. Salt and Sanctuary does not care about your feelings. It does not hold your hand. It does not explain itself. It just puts a weapon in front of you and an enemy behind you and lets physics sort out the rest. The combat is weighty, precise, and brutal. Every swing has real commitment behind it. You can't just spam attacks and survive, because one bad trade and you're eating massive damage. The animations are deliberate, the hitboxes are tight, and every enemy has a specific way they want to hurt you. Learning how to cancel attacks into dodges, how to beat out enemy swings, how to break through guard. This is the kind of combat that makes you feel genuinely skilled when you finally get it right. The RPG system here is surprisingly deep, a massive skill tree where you pick what kind of warrior you want to become. Pure strength build, dex-based assassin, arcane caster who also stabs people, all of it viable, all of it fun. And the world itself is designed to make you feel lost in the best possible way. Every area has its own visual identity, rotting temples, flooded ruins, cursed forests, and they all connect together in ways that make exploration feel like genuine discovery. Most people still haven't played this because they wrote it off as a 2D Souls clone, but the combat depth here rivals games that cost 3 times the price. There's one boss in Salt and Sanctuary that has ended more playthroughs than any other single encounter, and the worst part, you won't see it coming until it's already too late. Okay, so this one has a mechanic that sounds annoying, but ends up being one of the smartest combat design choices in any RPG on PS4. Every time you die in Chronos, and you will die, your character ages 1 full year. The older you get, the more your stats shift. Young characters are fast and agile. Older characters trade speed for pure power and magical ability, so the way combat feels literally changes based on how many times you've been beaten down. That is insane. That is such a cool concept, and nobody talks about it enough. The combat itself is a methodical third-person action system built around timing and patience. You block, you parry, you find openings, and you punish hard. There's no button-mashing path to victory here. Enemies will punish reckless attacks, and the only way forward is learning how to read every single enemy pattern and respond at exactly the right moment. The weapons are satisfying to use. Axes, swords, and special combat techniques all feel different, and swapping your approach mid-playthrough because you've aged too much is genuinely one of the most unique RPG experiences on the platform. The boss fights are where this game really earns its spot on this list. Each one is a masterclass in pressure. They hit hard, they're fast, and they demand everything you've learned about the combat system up to that point.
Most people only discovered this game because it came bundled with Remnant. Big mistake ignoring it, because the final boss fight in Chronos features a transformation sequence that completely breaks everything you thought you knew about how this game works.
Ashen looks simple, almost too simple. Pale, minimalist art style, no facial details on characters, muted color palette. First impression, forgettable. Then, the first real enemy hits you, and your health bar disappears in 2 shots, and suddenly you realize this game is not playing around. Ashen is a co-op action RPG with Souls-like combat bones, but what makes it special is how the combat feels different depending on what weapon class you're running. The game centers around big, crushing melee weapons, clubs, axes, spears, and every impact feels physical, like you actually connected, like something real just got destroyed. The stamina system forces you to fight smart. You can't go all out forever. You sprint in, get your hits, back off, recover, re-engage. It's a combat rhythm that rewards aggression with discipline, which sounds like a contradiction until you play it and understand exactly what that means. The RPG progression gives you a town you rebuild over time, and the characters you bring to your settlement actually come out and fight alongside you. It's passive co-op, but the way it integrates into combat makes every run feel less lonely and more alive. But the dungeon encounters in the late game, specifically one underground section, completely change the pacing and combat tone of the entire game, and the weapon you find at the end of it might be the most satisfying thing to unlock in any hidden gem action RPG on PS4. This one flew so far under the radar that most people have never even heard the name. Fade to Silence is a survival action RPG set in a frozen apocalypse where literally everything, the weather, the monsters, the world itself, is actively trying to kill you. And the combat system is mean in a way that feels completely intentional. You fight these corrupted, eldritch creatures called the Ridden, and the encounters are not clean or satisfying at first. They're chaotic, desperate, and exhausting, which is exactly the point. The combat is designed to feel like survival, like you're always one bad decision away from being finished. Weapons degrade, resources are limited. Every fight you pick has a cost, and knowing when to fight versus when to run is a combat decision that matters here more than in almost any other game on this list. The boss encounters, called Eldritch bosses, are genuinely terrifying. These are massive, ancient things that don't follow normal enemy logic, and the combat shifts completely in these moments into something more cinematic and intense. The RPG layer runs deep. Base building, follower management, skill upgrades, and all of it feeds back into making you stronger for the next combat encounter. This game had a rough early access period, which is why most people never gave it a real chance. That was a mistake, because in its final state, the last Eldritch encounter features a combat sequence that breaks every rule this game established, and surviving it is one of the most intense gaming moments on PS4 that almost no one has experienced. Everybody knows Neo 2. Almost nobody goes back to where it started, and that is genuinely sad. Neo 1 has combat that is arguably tighter than the sequel. The key pulse system, where you recover stamina by pressing a button at exactly the right moment after your attack string, creates this constant rhythm in every single fight. Attack, pulse, attack, pulse. Get it right and you're an unstoppable samurai machine. Get it wrong and you're gasping for stamina while a yokai rearranges your face. The stance system, low, mid, and high, fundamentally changes how every weapon handles. Same katana, 3 completely different combat styles. Low stance is fast and evasive. High stance is slow and destroys enemy guards. Mid stance is the balance point. Reading what the moment needs and switching on the fly is where this combat system reaches its peak. The weapon variety is brutal in the best way. Katanas, spears, axes, kusarigama, dual swords, odachi. Every weapon class feels distinct. Every weapon class has its own complete depth to explore. The yokai enemy design is incredible. These aren't just visually wild, they're mechanically unique. Each one has specific attack patterns, specific weaknesses, and specific key drain tactics that force you to actually engage your brain mid-fight. In the loot system, pure action RPG addiction. You will grind for hours for that one perfect weapon roll and feel nothing but joy when it finally drops. Most people count Neo out because they hit one early boss, get destroyed, and quit. They never reach the mid-game where the combat system fully opens up, and they never see the boss that the Neo community still debates as the hardest combat encounter in the entire series. Jack 13 built something special here, and almost nobody gave them credit for it. The Surge 2 runs a limb targeting system where you manually aim at specific enemy body parts mid-combat, arms, legs, head, torso, and cutting off armored limbs drops that piece of gear directly onto the ground for you to grab. It's a loot system built directly into the combat loop, and it is absolutely brilliant. Want that enemy's arm weapon? Cut the arm. Want that helmet? Target the head, break the neck piece, collect it. Every fight becomes a decision about what you want before the fight even starts, and that layer of intentionality makes even basic encounters feel strategic. The combat itself is fast, directional, and relentless. You dodge, you parry, you chain combo strings, and you're constantly managing your energy bar, which powers both your combat drone, basically a secondary weapon system, and your dodge timing. The boss fights in the Surge 2 are the highlight of the whole experience. These encounters go through multiple phases, each one forcing you to change tactics and recognize new patterns. There's one boss in particular, fought in an open arena with environmental hazards on all sides, where the combat goes from tactical to absolutely frenetic in a matter of seconds. And the weapon variety here is genuinely staggering. Single-handed, twin-rigged, punching weapons, heavy-duty, spears, and more, all with completely different movesets that change your combat identity entirely. There's a late-game combat encounter in the Surge 2 that most players say came out of nowhere and hit harder than anything in the first half of the game. The community still argues about how to handle it efficiently.
Before you say this isn't hidden, on PS4, a massive chunk of players still haven't actually played this, so it absolutely counts. Nier Automata's combat is one of the most stylish, fast, satisfying action experiences on the entire platform. You play as 2B, an android warrior, and every fight is a gorgeous, fluid performance. Light attacks, heavy attacks, pod fire, dodge cancel, launch into air combo, pod program special ability. It all flows together like a martial arts routine performed at 200% speed. The weapon system lets you equip 2 weapon sets and swap between them mid-combo, so you can mix short swords with spears or great swords with combat bracers, and the transition animations between weapons are so smooth they feel intentional, like the game was designed specifically so your combos would look incredible. The chip system is the RPG layer. You literally modify your operating system with combat chips that boost damage, add auto-heal, modify dodge properties, increase combo extenders. You can even remove your HUD chips to get bonus character slots, which is such a weird, interesting design choice that it perfectly sums up how creative this whole game is. And then there are the bullet hell sections, where the camera shifts perspective entirely and the combat becomes something else completely. A top-down shooter, a side-scrolling fighter, a twin-stick experience, all of it fluid, all of it connected. The boss fights are where the game becomes unforgettable. Each boss is a spectacle, not just visually, but mechanically. They force you to engage every part of the combat system you've learned. But the third playthrough of Nier Automata, which recontextualizes every combat encounter you've had, reveals something about this game that changes how you see every single fight retroactively. And what happens in the final boss sequence of Route C is something that almost no one sees coming the first time through. Most people who didn't follow indie RPG coverage in 2019 have never even heard this name. Greedfall is a third-person action RPG built by Spiders, a small French studio, and what they built punches so far above their weight class it genuinely feels unfair to other games at this budget level. The combat is aggressive and tactical at the same time. You have 3 main systems working in parallel: your weapon attacks, your guns, and your magic abilities, and weaving all 3 together in real time is where Greedfall's combat finds its rhythm. You can freeze an enemy with a magic trap, close the distance, unload a pistol shot at point-blank range, then cancel into a heavy sword combo. That entire string is available to you in the first hour. The weapon variety is fantastic. One-handed blades, two-handed weapons, daggers for fast multi-hit combos, staves for caster builds, and each weapon class completely changes how your character moves and engages in fights. The skill tree is genuinely deep. 3 main progression paths covering warrior, technical, and magic builds, and the way these paths cross-pollinate with each other gives you incredible flexibility in how you design your combat identity. The companion system adds another layer. You bring allies into combat who each have their own skills and abilities, and positioning them correctly in fights actually matters. A well-placed companion stagger can open an enemy up for your most powerful combo. But there's a faction-based combat encounter in the mid-game that forces you to fight through one of your own allies, and the way that sequence escalates from dialogue to full combat is one of the most unexpected action moments in any PS4 RPG most players haven't experienced. If you only play one game from this entire list, make it this one. Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning has combat that is so smooth, so responsive, and so deeply satisfying that it genuinely rivals games made by studios 10 times the size. This is not an exaggeration. The moment you pick up a weapon in this game and start swinging, something clicks immediately. A fluidity, a responsiveness, a physical joy in every button press that most big-budget action RPGs can't match. You have 6 weapon types: long swords, fey blades, fast dual-blade demon weapons, hammers, chakrams that you throw like a Marvel superhero, staffs for magic, and daggers. Every single one handles differently. Every single one has a completely unique moveset, combo string, and combat identity. And here's what makes Amalur insane. You can weapon swap in the middle of combos, mid-air, mid-string, mid-chaos. Your combo doesn't reset, it continues. Start with a greatsword slam, cancel into Feyblade spin attack, cancel into chakram throw. The game rewards every piece of that chain. The Destiny system is the RPG backbone. Instead of locking you into a class at the start, you assign fate cards called destinies based on how you invest your skill points. Pure Warrior, Universalist, Arcane Warrior, Finesse Caster Hybrid, the game doesn't care. It supports every combination and gives you passive bonuses for whatever path you commit to. The Reckoning mode is your ultimate resource. Build it up through combat, activate it, and the world goes into a slow-motion purple haze where you deal massive damage before triggering a finishing execution move on everything in range. It's spectacular every single time. The enemy variety is enormous. The world is genuinely massive. Multiple huge regions, hundreds of side quests, hidden dungeons, and faction storylines that build out a world rich enough to rival the Elder Scrolls in ambition. And there is one specific moment in the main quest, a combat sequence tied to the reveal of what your character actually is in this world's fate system, where the game throws every enemy type at you simultaneously in an arena that keeps shifting. And the weapon you unlock right before that fight, it completely changes the way the whole combat system feels from that point forward.